Oh, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. I hope you guys are doing well today. I know my day has just been great. Um, so thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your donation, for your time, for being here to take just to listen, right? If you would please, at this moment, and before we get anything started here, if you could please just join me in a moment of silence so that we can ring in and 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 get ourselves grounded down to the energies that we need to be attuned to, so that we can um, learn something today, so that we can have our perhaps we can relate to something that is said today that will help us in our journey of whatever it is that we're struggling with today. Now, so if you will, please indulge me in a moment of silence. I'll ring this in and we'll get started. Nam myo renge kyo, nam myo renge kyo, nam myo renge kyo. Buddha Shakyamuni, please guide us. Energies, the world, please allow us to connect, to embrace, to listen. All sentient beings connected to myself, to everyone here. Let's ground each other, let's help each other, guide each other. Thank you. Alrighty, so now that we got the now that we're grounded down to that energy, right? It's always good to start off in any subject or any endeavor that you do in your life with good good energies behind that, because it allows you to think different. It allows you to see things in the right view, so that you are able to get to the next step, right, of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, so anyway, what I'm going to do today is we're going to continue with what we did on the last video, talking about the six perfections, the six paramitas. And last time we we went over the first one, and that was generosity. And today we're going to dive into the second one, which is ethical discipline, and which is a big part of understanding how to live a spiritual way, understanding how to move past adversities in any type of suffering that's going on in your life. At least I found it to help me in my journey. And so those are the things that I talk about, things that have helped me along the way to get to this point in time of where I'm at in my life today. And so without any further ado, what I'm going to do is we'll read a little bit about what paramitas is, perfections, and I'm going to take that off of. We're going to dig into the Shambala Dictionary of Buddhism and Zen, and this one it's a Shambhala Dragons edition, and it's really a very informative book, because it's got I like this book because it gives you the translation from Sanskrit to Western English, right? So which is always a good thing to have, to revert back to. You know what I mean? To understand this spiritual way of living in Buddhism, because you always want to revert back to its origin, and that is the Sanskrit and Pali language. So, which is a very good thing to know and to study, right? So it's one of the things that I like to do, is to dig into the subjects, and then also dig in to see what the meanings and the words that come out of the Sanskrit and Pali language, because in the text of the sutras that we read in Buddhism, and myself, my way of learning Buddhism in the sect that I practice in my life right now, which is Riso Kosekai, we talk a lot about what's in the Threefold Lotus Sutra, and which has a lot of terms and words and the terminology. So it's always good to polish up on the Sanskrit part of it so that you understand when you're reading these things, and it brings more meaning, it brings to life the text, if you will, right? So anyway, like I said, we're going to talk about the six perfections, and which is the six paramitas, and which is paramita, meaning that which is in the Shambala dictionary, it translates as that which has reached the other shore. The transcendental, the paramitas, generally translated as the perfections, are the virtues perfected by the bodhisattvas in the course of his development. Now, there are six of these, which is the first one is the one we spoke about last week, which is generosity, and in the Sanskrit term, that's danya paramita. And the one that we're talking about today, which is the discipline, the ethical discipline, which is sila paramita. And the third is the kasanti paramita, which is patience. And the fourth is the virya paramita, which is energy of exertion. And the fifth one is the dhyana paramita, which is meditation. And the sixth is the prajna paramita, which is wisdom. Now, frequently four further virtues are added, which were accepted into the canon later, which is the Pali canon, and which is the seventh one. They say it's the upaya kaushala paramita, which is the right method or means, and the eighth is the pranidanya paramita, which is a vow. And the ninth one is the bala paramita, which is the manifestation of the 10 powers, dashabala in Sanskrit. And the 10th one is the jnana paramita, which is knowledge of the true definition of all dharmas. Now, jnana paramita consists of the benefits and giving in both the material and spiritual sense. Now, this includes being compassionate and kind and not keeping accumulative merit for oneself, but rather dedicating it to the liberation of all living beings. And that's the Bodhisattva way, right? Now, Danya, Shila Paramita, includes proper behavior conducive to the eradication of all passions and the securing of a favorable rebirth for the sake of liberating all living beings. Now, Shila Kasanti Paramita refers to the patience and tolerance that arise from the insight that all the problems of beings have causes. Virya Paramita is resolute effort that does not permit itself to be diverted by anything, of cutting through the illusion of an ego and of not experiencing oneself as separate from other beings. And Danya, which is Danya, and the Prajna Paramita, the Danya Prajna Paramita is the realization of supreme wisdom, which is Prajna. Wisdom meaning prajna. Now, very intriguing definitions, right? And I love the Sanskrit terminology. Personally, it makes it, when you understand those words and see them consistently in the text, it's easier to understand the text when you see these words. And if you're studying, it's a great way to enhance and perhaps broaden that mental capacity of you, because as we all, as you know that, well, maybe you don't, but Buddhism is all about the mind, and it's part in. It comes in layers. You know what I mean? You have to do this. You have to study this spiritual path in layers. You can't just dive into one book and expect to understand Buddhism all the way around, right? So, and this is just my personal opinion. I've found it that I'm starting to learn a lot more about the Buddhist concepts, the Buddhist way, and how you can involve it in your personal life of today. Because this is, again, this is a text and a teaching that is derived from someone who came up with this 2,600 years ago. You know what I mean? That's a long time ago, from living in those times to now. So you have to dissect the sutras so that you can find the connections to your life in today's world, because they fit really well. You'll find out if you keep studying and listening to the sutras and the explanations of many different people, because you have to get interpretations from many different people, and when you do that, those are the teachers, right? You're learning from other people's perspectives, and it broadens yours. So that's the way of the sangha, right? That's what the sangha's for, is so that you can do that and have those intellectual studies and the opportunity to ask questions, when you don't know, you know what I mean? Because believe me, when I first started, I knew about Buddhism and meditation and stuff like that, but not to the point of intellectual study. And when you put that part in with the practice, oh man, things start happening in your life, man, and you'll be just amazed at how your life starts turning out. You know what I mean? And it's just beautiful. But anyway, I'm going to dig into the second chapter of the Six Perfections that discusses ethical discipline, and that's the second perfection that we're going to be discussing today. And it starts off with the role of ethics is important whether one is a layperson or ordained. As humans, we are capable of distinguishing between appropriate and inappropriate actions. Those which bring both immediate and ultimate happiness are clearly beneficial and wholesome. Now, those that bring happiness neither now nor later are indisputably unwholesome, as are those which bring only short-lived pleasure but ultimate detriment. Simply following our desires and acting impulsively without such considerations lands us in trouble. Now, whatever harms us and others is non-virtuous, while whatever benefits us and others is virtuous. This is worth bearing in mind, and I like that they put that in there, because that is a very big part of I believe, purifying your karmic energy, and we'll dig into that one day. I'll dig into that subject in another episode. But for now, it's just beautiful that it's in there, because it's a big part of living an ethical and disciplined way of living. Right now, although generosity will bring us future resources, these will be wasted unless we use them in a human or celestial rebirth. Faulty ethics lead to bad rebirth, in which we can only use up the fruits of past virtue but cannot accumulate fresh stores. A dog may live in luxury as an outcome of past generosity. It may look nice and be liked and cultivated by everyone as the result of practicing patience in the past. But it is still only a dog, capable of discriminating between wholesome and unwholesome actions, right? Now, in his letter to a friend, Nagarjuna tells the king, keep your ethical discipline pure, free from degenerative and decline, free from degeneration and decline, unadulterated and unstained, as the earth is for the animate and inanimate. Discipline, the Buddha said, is the basis of all good qualities. And so it's a really good, parable there, or just the letter, right, of Nagarjuna. Now, Nagarjuna advises his friends not to let his ethical discipline degenerate by making mistakes or decline under the influence of the disturbing emotions. Neither should it be adulterated by the presence of attachment. Thinking only of liberation, he should keep it pure without allowing it to be polluted by worldly concerns. The Buddha used the analogy of the earth, which supports everything, animate and inanimate, to illustrate that good ethics are the essential ground for the growth of all noble qualities. Now, having established the criteria, remain mindful of them and check your thoughts and actions repeatedly during the day. When you feel tempted to do something negative, your sense of self-respect as a decent person and so-called practitioner will be a helpful constraint. Also, reflecting on how the action would appear to those who admire who you admire has a restraint of effect. Conscientiousness is preventing faulty actions, leads to ethical discipline, which is your true protection. If people lived by such an inner code of discipline, there wouldn't be any need for law enforcement on such a vast scale, right? Now, I really like the way they emphasize the essentials ground for growth of noble qualities, and they also put in there that establishing your criteria, remain mindful of them and check your thoughts and actions repeatedly during the day. And that is one of the things in recovery that you are doing. You have to do that on a repetitive basis to be consistent in a life of recovery, right? In a life of dealing with mental health issues, right? It's not something that you're doing just periodically, right? No, this is something that is affecting you on a daily basis, right? And I know for myself, dealing with the PTSDs and dealing with alcohol and dealing with the drugs and dealing with the trauma and that sort of thing, and the depressions and then anxieties, all that stuff. If I only dealt with it like I used to, was just here and now, and most of the time was just covering it up with using or with being depressed or getting into this little nutshell, then your essential ground for growth of the noble qualities is, in a sense, kind of it dissipates, right? And not that it goes away, because that noble quality of you, that's going to be that Buddha nature that you have. That's that goodness that you have, that everybody has. But because we're dealing with all these external things of the world, of this suffering of the world, you become delusional to it, and you forget about it, right? You'd rather use, you'd rather drink, you'd rather sleep, you'd rather eat, you'd rather do, unethical things to get you through the next day, right? And that's just it comes with the territory of dealing with mental health issues, right? Now, but I love that it talks about that, because in recovery, that's one of the things that you hear a lot in the rooms, right? Take it one day at a time, and that means taking inventory of the things that you're doing, the non-virtuous things that you do, and because this is happening 24 hours a day, right? So you got to be. The consistency allows you to polish that up and to get better at it, right? And we all got to start somewhere. So just know that it is rough sometimes in the very beginning, for everybody, right? I mean, for myself it was, and the consistency of doing the spiritual and the educational, I guess, the intellectual part of it, because it's a big thing. You can't do new things if you don't learn new things, right? Now, it goes on to say, we hope for and speak of peace and happiness, but as long as we don't begin to create peace within ourselves, our hopes are futile. Lack of attachment to one's own side, lack of antagonism towards the other side, and lack of confusion regarding what should be cultivated and discarded are the foundation for peace. Tolerance and patience don't arise from the suppression of anger, which simply goes underground and persists as resentment. So, no true peace and harmony are possible while resentment smolders. Effort to achieve conciliation and understanding is a vital concern. And man, in recovery, don't we all know, man, that in dealing with any of the suffering, man, we like to suppress a lot, and it's just an easy way out. Right? For a lot of us, it's an easy way out to suppress things and not deal with them. But that they're smoldering, and at some point it's going to catch fire, right? At some point it's going to those things build up, and you're going to need to have a good essential ground for the growth of the noble qualities, right? Now, a bodhisattva's ethical discipline takes three forms: restraint from harm, creation of virtue, and work for others. The latter two depend upon the first. Our perfection of ethical discipline is not measured by how successful we are in stopping violence or unethical behavior in the world, but by how developed our personal intention and ability to refrain from harm. Very big thing right there. You know what I mean? That last part there. You know what I mean? The personal intention and the ability to refrain from the harm is it's hard to refrain from the harm if you don't know how to refrain from the harm, right? And that's the whole purpose of the discipline. The ethical discipline is so that you get the wisdom to know. And the way you do that is by engaging in studies of whatever spiritual path you want to take in your own recovery, or whatever mental deals that you're dealing with, or whatever, right? And just for myself personally, it just happens to be Buddhism. And among other things that I pick up and I read and you know, go to different meetings and different communities and pick up, because there's teachers everywhere. You know what I mean? There's teachers everywhere, and if you put your faith, your know-how with reverence to every study and every teacher that you do, you'll find out that you're going to be looking, the consistency of that, you start looking at the good qualities, the good virtuous things of that person, and the non-virtuous things also, because we all have both, and it allows you to see that in a different light, so that you can connect the dots to what taps into your frequency, to what taps into what works for you, to your capacity. I like that the Buddha uses the term levels of capacity of high, medium, and low, because that's how he taught his teachings. Because there were different people's capacity for learning and for understanding and for indulging in the teachings was at different levels, because that's just the way it is, right? I mean, we are not all the smart person, or we don't know, everybody doesn't know everything, right? So just real quick, because we're talking about the bodhisattvas, and I like to kind of always get the definition of stuff, because maybe someone who's watching the video maybe are not keen on the Buddhist terminologies and stuff like that. So it's always good to give the definition so that they understand, and we kind of know what we're talking about here, right? So I'm going to give you the definition that's coming from the Shambala dictionary of Zen and Buddhism. Now, in the definition that they have here for bodhisattvas, so just so you'll know what it is. But the bodhisattva is Sanskrit term for enlightenment being. For an enlightenment being, someone in Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva is a being who seeks Buddhahood through the systematic practice of the perfect virtues, paramita, but renounces complete entry into nirvana until all beings are saved. The determining factor for his action is compassion, or karuna, supported by highest insight and wisdom, which is prajna. A bodhisattva provides active help, is ready to take upon himself the suffering of all other beings, and to transfer his own karmic merit to other beings. The way of a bodhisattva's beings with arousing the thought of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, and taking the bodhisattva is divided into the career of a bodhisattva is divided in 10 stages. The bodhisattva's ideal replaced in Mahayana and the Hinayana ideal of the Arhat, whose effort is directed towards the attainment of his own liberation, since this was found to be too narrow and ego-oriented. The notion of the bodhisattva is already found in Hinayana writings, where it refers to the historical Buddha Shakyamuni in his previous existence as they are described in the Jatakas. In Mahayana, the idea of the bodhisattva is rooted in the belief in future Buddhas who have long since existed as bodhisattvas. Now, the Mahayana distinguishes two kinds of bodhisattvas, earthly and transcendent. Earthly bodhisattvas are persons who are disguised or who are distinguished from others by their compassion and altruism. as well as their striving toward the attainment of enlightenment. And transcendent bodhisattvas have actualized the paramitas and attained Buddhahood, but have postponed their entry into complete nirvana. They are in possession of perfect wisdom and are no longer subject to samsara. They appear in the most various forms in order to lead beings on the path to liberation or moksha. They are the objects of the veneration of believers who see them as showers of the way and helpers in time of need. The most important of these transcendent bodhisattvas are Avalokitesvara, Manjusri, Kitsnogavara, Maha Sampanprata, and Samantabhartra, which are a few of the disciples, right? So that's the definition of a bodhisattva, which, man, that really, if you compare it to your life today, that's someone who is like a who is like a sponsor in recovery, right? And perhaps in someone who is practicing Buddhism, like in Risoko Sekai sect, those are the Dharma teachers, right? Those are the Dharma teachers. Those are those active members who are constantly trying to alleviate the sufferings of other beings through their practice, through their donation of their time and their prajna, their wisdom, right? And you know that you see them with reverence, because that to become a Dharma teacher, you have to do some things. You have to do some things, like it said in here. There were the two types of bodhisattvas, right? And the one that wants to help, and then the transcendent one that has already perfected the 6 paramitas. And that's what we're doing here, is that you're doing this on a repetitive basis so that you purify that part of you and live a life and a spiritual way of thinking that are perfecting these 6 things that we're talking about. And the ethical discipline being one of them, man. And it just it can get really deep, but it's really a very important part of the bodhisattva path, and that's the path that I'm on. You know what I mean? So this is the path that I'm on, and it's part of the stuff that I like to share, because if I'm learning it and understanding it and living it in my life, then that's what I share with my audience, because I don't share anything that I'm not currently doing or that I have done. You know what I mean? I'm not going to give you something that I don't know anything about. I would be doing you and myself a disservice, and that would be an act of a non-virtuous act, right? And the bodhisattva way is to try to do every action that you do as a virtuous act, so that you so that the cause and effect of that is where it needs to be in the natural laws of cause and effect, right? Now, where were we at? A bodhisattva's ethical discipline of restraint from faulty actions is the intention to stop doing anything which is of harm to others and to dispel the source of that harm. Harm here refers to primarily the 7 harmful physical and verbal activities like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and meaningless speech. Killing injures the body and life of others, while stealing robs them of their property. Sexual misconduct exploits others, sullies their purity, and arouses disturbing emotions from which unwholesome action arises. Now, lying deceives others. Divisive speech turns friends into foes and further estranges those already on unfriendly terms. Harsh and abusive language hurts and upsets others, while idle talk distracts them and wastes their time. These physical and verbal actions are forms of violence that spring from the three harmful mental states: covetousness, harmful thoughts, and wrong views. Now, in engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, Shantideva says, understanding that special insight, well endowed with calm abiding, destroys the disturbing emotions. First seek calm abiding, but for the accomplished non-attachment to the world with intense delight. Now, special insight into reality with a calm, abiding mind destroys the disturbing emotions. For the growth of such special insight, we must first develop a calmly abiding mind. This heightened state of concentration can only be cultivated successfully if we are free from attachment to worldly concerns, the prerequisite of true ethical conduct, right? And the first step to recognize and acknowledge faulty thoughts and actions such as which very few people are willing to do. The Kadampa masters watched all their thoughts and actions, putting aside a white or black stone as they occurred and making a tally at the end of each day. Many people keep a journal and carry it with them all the time. It could be used in a similar way by entering ticks and crosses. Then at the end, at night, you can see how many of each there are. If there are more ticks, you can congratulate yourself, but if there are more crosses, you could gently remind yourself you're doing what you've always done. It's not surprising things are still the same. If you want them to be different, you'll have to change these habits. Now, purify all faults daily before you go to sleep. The great Indian master Atisha set us an aspiring example in this. On the long journey to Tibet, he would stop the caravan each time he felt he had committed a fault, and everyone traveling with him waited while he undertook purification practice before a stupa, which he carried for this purpose. He was always conscious that death could come at any time and that unpurified negative actions would be a source of future suffering. Now, if you carefully watch your physical and verbal and mental activities, you will gradually learn to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome ones. Cultivation of such mindfulness is also a useful foundation for meditative stabilization. In your meditation sessions, recall your negative activities and purify them. There is no need to hold on to guilt and feel weighed down by it. You perform the action and you also have the power to purify them, no matter how grave they are. Faults, mistakes, and disturbing emotions are not an integral part of our nature, but temporary blemishes which can be removed. I really like that part. I really like what they're talking about there, because that's something in that has helped me grow in my recovery and in my spiritual practice. That in my meditation sessions, when before bed and when I wake up, I reflect on everything that I've done, and I reflect on the studies that I've done, not only on my life, my daily life and my actions and my thoughts, but also what I've studied or read or whatever, right? So I've been consistent with it, and it has really broadened the way I interact with myself. and the way I want to interact with others, right? Because it is part of that karmic purification, right? Is to reflect on the unwholesome, the non-virtuous things that are going on in your life, because they're happening all the time. You know what I mean? And when you can reflect on that, you're going to find out that, I say this quite often, that 99% of the suffering, the answer to the suffering, and 99% of the time, is in the suffering. And you just have to sit with it and contemplate it. And the key thing here is the repetitiveness, the one day at a time. You know what I mean? Consistency is what gives you that good rooted foundations to have a good ethical discipline, right? And now the four important counteractions are power of reliance, the power of counteractive behavior, the power of regret, and the power of promise. All negative actions are created either in relation to the three jewels or to other living beings. Those created in relation to the three jewels, the enlightened one, their teaching, and the spiritual community are purified in reliance on them by taking heartfelt refuge. Those created in relation to other living beings are purified by wishing to help them and by arousing the altruistic intentions. Now, that right there is a big connecting the dots in not only spiritual Buddhism, but in the rooms of recovery, is that those three jewels. And here it's referring to those created in relation to the three jewels, the enlightened one, which is your God of your understanding, and their teachings, right? The sutras, the scriptures, the big book, the NA book, whatever, right? That's the scriptures. And the spiritual community. Now, the spiritual community will refer to your sangha, your church groups, your home groups, the rooms of AA and NA. You know what I mean? That's the sangha. That's the community that is there to help. To help by arousing the altruistic intention, right? And counteractive behavior is any positive action undertaken as a purificatory measure. This may consist of prostrations or offerings, cultivating compassion and love, or it can be any consciously kind-hearted action, contemplating that the doer of the negative action and the action and the object in relation to which is performed are all interdependent and empty of intrinsic existence, is the most effective counteractive conduct of all, since it gets at the very root of our negative actions, the ignorance, which is the source of all disturbing emotions. Now, the power of regret involves acknowledgement that we have performed a wrong action and recognizing it, and recognizing that it will bring suffering if left unpurified. I really like that one, because for a lot of us that are dealing with suffering, especially in the rooms of addiction and in trauma and in mental health, that the power of regret involves is recognizing the wrong action and recognizing that if you continue to do it, it's going to bring you more suffering. You know what I mean? And when you keep doing this on a consistent basis, you'll find out. I know in my spiritual path that it really awakened me to change the habit, to change the mental thought process, because I believe that's where it starts. It's all about the mind, right? Now, a negative action has 4 effects. For instance, in the case of killing, the suffering we cause as we kill a living creature results in a bad rebirth. This is the action's fruit or maturation. We have shortened the life of a living being, which results in an experience similar to the action performed after the bad rebirth. When we are once more born as a human, our life will be shortened by sickness or by an accident. The worst effect is the tendencies of repeat the negative actions again, which builds up the the instinct to kill. By killing, we rob a living being of its splendor. This produces environmental results that we are forced to live with in an unpleasant place, which lacks any natural beauty. Now, this is kind of gets the example that they're using of killing. I mean, it's a little deep, but it's a good example, because it's a necessary example, because if any of you guys know the world of addiction, you're dealing with life or death. You know what I mean? Mental health, you're dealing with life or death. So it's a big part of knowing the bad part of that type of ethical discipline. You know what I mean? Because you can't polish up or have really good ethical discipline if you don't know the bad ethical discipline, because you're not going to know what to fix. You're not going to know what to compare it to, or where the faults are, right? And that's the taking inventory of your daily life. You know, when of your actions and your day of your day, and meditating on that, and understanding what it is, where it is that you need to fix. You know what I mean? What habits you got to change. And the good thing is that it's all changeable, right? And it's all of impermanence too. So and that's a really good thing to understand and to remember, because we don't know how long we're here, right? So that's one of the, it gets a little deep, but I'm going to keep moving here. So it also states that, let's see where we're at. Okay, now, while feeling frustrated and disconnected, we cannot enjoy our own company. Apparent self-hatred stems from an exaggerated preoccupation with ourselves, which gives rise to defensive hostility or a sense of alienation. If we begin to feel differently about ourselves, we will be a lot more relaxed and less inclined to violent attachment or aversion, which are based on unrealistic projections. These are deep-seated problems for which there are no simple remedies. Now, in this letter to a friend, Nagarjuna tells the king, the subduer said, "Care is the source of nectar, carelessness the source of death. Therefore, to increase virtuous conduct, always take interest in cultivating care." And that goes back to that taking inventory. You know what I mean? The subduer said, care is the source of nectar. Now, if you're taking personal inventory of your actions and reflecting on that, that's showing that you care. You're showing love and compassion to you, because you cannot show love and compassion to any other sentient being if you're not showing it for yourself. So it starts all with you. It starts all with you in your mind, right? So it's very, very good practices and very good prasna, very good wisdom and teachings here. You know what I mean? I think so. It really gets you to thinking that ethical discipline is a big part of living a life of spirituality, living a life of recovery. Now, conscientious is resisting the disturbing emotions is the source of the nectar of immorality because it enables us to gain freedom from cyclical existence. Otherwise, we continue to experience many forms of pain and suffering associated with birth, sickness, aging, and death, and the frustrating situation we encounter. Cultivating such conscientious care in preventing disturbing emotions leads to true ethical discipline, the root of all happiness. And that's so cool that it says that. That's so. I love these texts because it's dissecting. It's dissecting, and it's giving you a path, right, that you can try and to see if it works in your life. And that's why one of the things that I love about Buddhism is that the path is the middle path, and the middle path always works well because you're not attached to anything. You're just on the middle road, and you can see everything, the broad spectrum of the suffering, and you're not just reverting to the left or to the right and staying attached here or staying attached there. When you're in the middle, you can see it all, and you know what to fix, right? Very, very cool concept, I believe. Now, cultivating, while ethical discipline mainly concerns our physical and verbal behavior, our state of mind influences all we do. Use this pleasant garden of your precious human rebirth to cultivate the three kinds of ethical disciplines until they flower and fruit in the state beyond sorrow. Having laid a foundation of restraint from harm, begin to build up positive energy and constantly strengthening your ethical conduct, and by training in concentration and wisdom. When you have taken a large loan from the bank, you have to repay it before you can begin to save any money yourself. Once the investment accounts looks good, you can start to give material help to others. Similarly, restraint from harmful actions is the basic repayment of the loan, the first step. Then you can begin creating a wealth of positive energy and use it to help others. The Bodhisattva way, right? Now, through all three kinds of ethical disciplines, though all three kinds of ethical disciplines are practiced simultaneously, beginners lay greatest emphasis on the ethical discipline of restraint from harm, while new bodhisattvas concentrate on the creation of virtue. Success in work for the well-being of others increases your interest in hearing, thinking, and meditating. If the work you are doing proves useful, it is a mistake not to give it as much energy as you can. Yet, at the same time, you should not jettison more contemplative activities, but aim for a healthy balance. Now, when motivated by the altruistic intention, training in ethical discipline, concentration, and wisdom, as well as all positive actions or practices such as prostrations, curriculations, and saying prayers and reciting mantras, are a bodhisattva's ethical discipline of creating virtue. Much merit is created by venerating and serving those with special qualities, and by appreciating and praising the marvelous qualities of the three jewels, and by mentally and verbally rejoicing in the good done by others. Instead of retaliating when harmed, the situation can become a source of merit by regarding what has happened as the outcome of your own past actions. Sincerely dedicate all virtue you create and use it as a basis for heartfelt prayers of aspiration. Be conscientious in seeking ways to create fresh virtue and to sustain, enhance virtue already created. so that the flow is never interrupted. Also, guard the doors of your senses. Now, the Kadampa master Geshe Sonam said, "I stand at the doors of my house with my spear at the ready. When the disturbing emotion turns aggressive, I am aggressive too. But if they relax, so do I." Why are the disturbing emotions indicted as the arch villains? Because they make the mind unpeaceful, turbulent, and unserviceable. When they are active, we feel restless and upset, and express this in words and actions that disturb others. Neither we nor they thrive on this. When our mind is free from disturbing emotions, we feel serene and happy. Our physical and verbal behavior expresses this and brings joy to others. And that's right there hits recovery and dealing with mental issues really well, because it talks about the serenity. When you are mentally serene and you're in that state of mind, you reflect that, and your environment will reflect that. You know what I'm saying? Now, the teachings are not a system of rules nor a fixed code of conduct to which we must adhere. They provide us with the means to alleviate our own and others' suffering. Now, football players follow rules. They understand them well and know how to implement them, but what they do is not a spiritual practice. Spiritual practice consists of knowing the teachings and implementing them in such a way that they bring about the inner transformation, extending our perspective beyond its present narrow limits. I like that paragraph there, because that is telling you that spiritual practice consists of knowing the teachings and implementing them in such a way that they bring about the inner transformation, extending our perspective beyond its present and narrow limits. And that's, like I said earlier, you have to not only involve the mental meditation and compassion, but you have to involve the intellectual teachings of the sutras and put them into practice in your life, in your suffering first. You know, it's really, really cool stuff here. Now, as Mahayana practitioners, our aim is everything we do is to alleviate others' suffering and bring them happiness. Thus, restraint from harm and the creation of virtue are for the sake of others. We needn't to be anxious that we will remain mired in suffering. If we exert ourselves for them, because of our own well-being, is a natural byproduct of our concern for others. Any help we give while motivated by the altruistic intention and holding the bodhisattva vow constitutes the ethical discipline of working for others. And that's a really cool way of thinking, man, because that's also one of the things that we do in recovery, is that the most important room is the people who are new, right? Our main thing is sharing stories and sharing what has helped you along the way to get to where you're at by helping the addict who still suffers, right? Which is a bodhisattva deed. You know what I mean? And so it's really, really cool stuff there. Now, as a sincere desire to cultivate what is constructive and avoid what is detrimental leads to successful restraint from the 10 harmful actions. As a result of familiarity with such restraint, one will easily be able to follow a bodhisattva's way of life in the future. Now, lack of restraint results in many faulty actions and an inability to keep promises and abide by commitments. In his summary of the stages of the path, Geshe Sonam says, ethical conduct is water that washes the stains of faulty action and moonlight dispelling the hot torment of disturbing emotions. Glorious like Mount Meru among those of the 9 states, its power subdues all beings without use of threats. Knowing this, the wise safeguards like their eyes the discipline to which they are fully committed. And so there are 11 major ways of assisting others. The first of these is to offer them our support in activities like accumulating, projecting, and increasing wealth through farming, business, and so forth, and using only ethical means. Also include in support for those who suffer by divisive ways to help the blind, the deaf, and infirm. And these are just terms, they're using these farming terms stuff because this is what was happening 2,600 years ago, right? So that's why the examples they use kind of might sound a little weird, but that's part of the connecting the dots of the teachings to figure out where they fit into your life, right? Now, and there's like, it says that there's 11 major ways. The second of the 11 ways is of working for others, consistent of giving friendship to those who are confused. You know what I mean? And that's helping the addict who still suffers. Helping your fellow Sangha member who is having trouble. You know what I mean? That's what the circle of Hosa is for in the Risoko Seikai Buddhist sect is you get to vent out, right? And you can seek help there sometimes, you know what I mean? Now, the third is to give friendship through offering service to others, which is, basic, that's a big part of recovery, right? Is offering service to others. Now, the fourth is to help and protect those who fear harm from other living beings, and whether human or animals or spirits or who are in danger of the elements, right? So that's being the bodhisattva, to relieve suffering of all sentient beings, and that's everything. That's from human life, animal life, plant life, right? And the fourth is to help, that was the fourth. Now, the fifth way of helping others is giving support and consolation to those grieving over a loss or a separation from whatever, right? So that's another thing, is being there for the addict who self-suffers, being there for the sanghas, and supporting your fellow man, right? Your neighbor, your family, whatever. Now, the sixth is to give support to those in material or spiritual need. That one's a really big one, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times people need a helping hand, right? And to be able to help in any way, shape, or form, and the spiritual form is when people find comfort in something, it allows them to bring the walls down. You know what I mean? And when you can allow, when you feel comfortable in a space, a safe space, good things start happening for you. You know what I mean? Now the seventh is to support those who have different kinds of aspirations. You know, this might involve helping them by ethical means or to find employment, whatever, right? And it just goes back to just helping to helping, even if you're just, you know, saying hi to somebody, right? Goes a long way. Now the eighth is to give support in keeping with others' dispositions and capacities by helping them to overcome hindrances to their immediate and long-term well-being through methods which are appropriate in each particular case. And that's another one, you know, right? It's part of helping, if you're in a 12-step program, maybe helping with the steps or you know, working on your steps or whatever, right? Even just listening is a big thing, right? Now, the ninth is to support those who are engaged in constructive activities, means praising and encouraging those whose conduct is admirable. And the 11th is to give support by using any miraculous powers we possess to help others. And this may include teaching non-verbally and by demonstrating impermanence or the importance of wanting to free oneself from cyclical existence. So someone with miraculous powers might use them to, you know, think that, or to, well, not. I guess I missed it there, but now the different ways of helping others are practiced through analytical meditation, placement meditation, and action. The Bodhisattva's conduct is rooted in the altruistic intention. The cultivation of kindness automatically prevents the affliction of harm, although the conduct described here is that of highly accomplished bodhisattvas. There is much we can already do to help others in similar ways. And that's one of the things that I was talking about, that you're going to have to do things at the capacity of others, right? And at your capacity too, right? Because you're learning and you're putting new things into your life so that you live a better way through your own capacity, right? And whatever that is, it's steps. You have to take one step at a time, and that's one day at a time, right? And that covers the ethical discipline, man, of the 6 perfections, the 6 paramitas. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something today. I hope it was insightful. And hopefully it was something that someone needed to hear, something that was said today. Hopefully it was something that somebody's ears needed to hear, somebody's heart needed to be mended or something like that. But without any further ado, man, I just want to thank you guys for sticking with me this long and listening. And it's always good to have conversation, right? To hear other people's perspectives on things, and it's great. So thank you for your donation. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. And if you would, at this time, please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, go subscribe, share the channel. It's the only way that we can help the addicts who still suffers, help those people in spiritual need and that sort of thing, is to share the channel so that someone who needs to hear it can get some help or lift them up a little bit or whatever, right? And that's the Bodhisattva way. That's the way of helping others, right? And is to share. And but without any further ado, I guess thank you again. And just know that when you do hit that subscribe button, you'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSD, childhood traumatic experiences, trauma, drug addiction, alcoholism, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, depression, all of those sorts of things. Because I say those things because I dealt with all of those things in my lifetime, and I know a way out. And my way out could be your way out. So thank you for listening. And I'm going to ring us out. Here we go. Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo, Nam-myo renge kyo. Buddha Shakyamuni, thank you for guiding us. Thank you all for guiding us. Thank you for everything. Till next time, on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.